I have an update on our Temu couch buying process. Yes. So I'm going to have to move away from the microphone and won't be able to hear anything. But I do have to show you my Temu couch.
Oh yeah, let's see it. Is it going to be this big?
I'll remind you, this is a adult inflatable couch. These are key words in the title.
All right, let's see it.
But allow me, I put on real pants for this.
Oh boy.
Narrator Emma here. Bet you saw that coming. For everyone who doesn't see the video portion of this, imagine I have pulled out a child-sized, one-seat, bright blue inflatable chair that looks like a pool floaty. In fact, it might be a pool floaty. It is about a foot tall, and I've walked away to go sit on it, or try to sit on it because I don't really fit because it was meant for a small child, and then I get up from basically the floor and walk right back to the microphone.
How much did that cost you?
$7.31.
You overpaid.
And they sent me an air pump, but it didn't work. So I blew that up myself.
You know, you got to shop for toddler t-shirts. That's the thing that I keep buying on there. But yeah.
Welcome back to the Commerce Collective, a podcast brought to you by Flywheel. You're listening to This Month Above the Fold, a monthly series on the Commerce Collective feed where Patrick Miller, co-founder of Flywheel, covers the most important e-commerce stories each month, and this is your May 2024 recap. I'm Emma Irwin, brand marketing manager at Flywheel and host of this podcast. Let's get into it. Today, we are talking about Uber and Instacart, SKU sharing, and then the fate of TV advertising. So for story number 1, Uber and Instacart are partnering up on restaurant delivery, where Uber Eats is going to power a restaurant delivery tab within Instacart's platform. Both Instacart and Uber Eats get to tap into each other's audiences here, but I'm curious for your POV on the long game here for both. What does this partnership unlock for the future?
Sure. So far, within my Instacart app and my Uber app, I'm not seeing any breadcrumbs between the two of them. So have yet to, been trying to use them, see how it actually works. Have not seen it yet. When I look at the top part of my navigation within Instacart, I see for you, offers, pickup, grocery, in-store prices, no restaurants. And so what I find interesting there is one, sort of the focus on price, which has historically been a weakness, for Instacart, just because pricing is at the sole discretion of the retailers, not Instacart. And so Instacart's looking for different ways to sort of steer customers to where there's greater value. Now, that said, because the prices are higher, the second order effect is sort of an accidental, really interesting one for Instacart in the sense that it becomes more affluent customers that are more driven by convenience because the prices are higher. And so Instacart, sort of not by their design, but somewhat brilliantly, now all of a sudden has a cohort of customers that are more affluent and thus very valuable to everybody else. And so that's great for Uber. They can then share instead of bludgeoning each other to death. Instacart can send them, more affluent customers. And in general, Uber is going to be, probably my guess is slightly less affluent, but still pretty affluent. I then look at okay, well, how are the data being exchanged and what's the actual trade here? And so I went the other day and I was like, oh, I'm going to just try Lowe's. And I'm always just okay, let's use Instacart for different things. I want to try different retailers. And so here's what the T's and C's said, which are always fun to read. To better serve you, Lowe's would like to receive your email, phone number, delivery address, and current historical order details. Okay, I was like, well, that's a lot. That's not just name and email. That's also all my, order history. Okay, don't know what they share, what they don't. And then later it says, retailers may use this information to send you marketing messages. Got it. Unsurprising. They may also use this information to offer better discounts and to keep your favorite items in stock. Retailer may also disclose to Instacart whether you are a current member of the retailer's loyalty program and whether you have deleted or canceled your loyalty account. Okay, that's what's actually happening here. And so when we sort of look at and I think most interesting is Walmart talking about, their more affluent customers that they get online. Well, Walmart's offering the same prices, on Instacart as they are online and as they are on Walmart. So that tells me that Walmart's then subsidizing because they're getting all this interesting affluent customers from Instacart. And oh, by the way, Instacart's willing to share a whole lot of information about these customers, or at least they're potentially as outlined in the messaging that I received. So if I'm Uber, why wouldn't I do the exact same thing? And why wouldn't I? And you got to assume it's the same handshake. They then sort of can get out of each other's way. One focuses on, on rides and restaurants. The other focuses on groceries. And then they're then be able to send the information back and forth to one another. So I think it makes a ton of sense. I'll be curious to see sort of, how the marketing messaging, goes over with customers over time, and just, how durable are those loyalty programs? And then what are those CACs ultimately?
Do you think there's more opportunity for one platform here versus the other in kind of the long run?
Yeah, I don't know. I almost look at it, if I take a step back and I'm like, okay, do me as a customer really care about my relationship with Instacart or with Uber? Or do I care if it's just sort of like this amorphous relationship of convenience via my cell phone? I'm not sure. I'm sort of, I haven't gotten any like weird messaging from retailers, weird banner ads, I guess weird banner ads, everybody gets those. But no like email marketing. So like I haven't seen anybody like give me the creepies because of the marketing. And so there is restraint here. But at some point, it's sort of like, okay, how disciplined is everybody going to be? But ultimately, I think it's good for both of them. And they need to focus on their core businesses, make them profitable, and make them grow.
Got it. You know who gives me the creepies after purchasing something is Temu. Oh my gosh. Oh gosh.
They're single-handedly keeping Meta up and to the right with how much money they spend, as well as the whole open web. But that's a whole nother story. We can talk about their financial statements.
Yeah, crazy. The emails that I'm getting and like texts and ads on social and everything. I'm like, please stop. I don't want the gift box.
And to me, the other thing is then like, the thing I like to look at is like on Instacart, who has in-store pricing and why? And when I look at it, it's like Wise Market in Baltimore. And then Wise Market is also selling on Amazon they're the only grocer in Baltimore. They're selling via the marketplace. That tells me like, okay, they're in trouble because across multiple marketplaces and they have in-store prices they're trying to drive. Sprouts Market, inverse, as far as customer, but the exact same thing. And then Walmart. And the Walmart one is the one that I'm like, there's something else going on here. They're clever. And so to me, it's all about the affluent customer and shifting around.
I see. Okay. Story number 2. This one is more of a perspective on an observation made by Caitlin Dewey of Links I Would G-Chat My Friends Substack fame. But she recently wrote this article titled A Glitch in the Matrix of Online Shopping. And in this piece, she's looking at the online furniture market, specifically digging into how basically every piece of furniture you find online across the Amazons, the Wayfair, Walmart, Target, etc. seems like it's just the same piece of furniture with a different brand and price tag slapped on it. I'm dying to kind of hear your overall point of view on this, your take of this SKU sharing that's going on.
Well, I think it's a lot of product managers or supplier managers were probably tasked with, hey, open up a marketplace and get as many SKUs as possible. And then they were then bonused on the number of SKUs. And so, okay, what are the categories that have the most SKUs? It's furniture and apparel. So it's unsurprising that it's, furniture SKUs. And also like most people, when they search for furniture, they don't search for, necessarily a branded name. They're always searching for sort of need state. They search for a coffee table, not a Ashley, home store coffee table. Okay. Well, that all said, number one, it's sort of an interesting question of like, does anybody actually want to buy a couch on Best Buy? I don't think so. I mean, I've never heard of anybody. I guess one person did once, but like, what's the point of the marketplace? And like, sure, everybody wants to have like the gross margins of the marketplace and the great ad business that could follow a marketplace, but does this actually make sense? And then also like, okay, well, if I'm a manufacturer, what is my greatest asset? And my greatest asset is actually selection. And we have an upcoming paper coming out talking about the big shift. And that's one of the large points is that if I'm a branded manufacturer, who gets what, on a channel or a retailer basis is a monstrous decision and critical. This is the opposite. And these are not really branded manufacturers. And these are people who are just saying like, well, they're drop ship manufacturers. And so this becomes a sort of an interesting game of like, what do they list where for how much? And what are the various conversion rates? What are the CACs? And how much price can they take? Because it's at their sole discretion because it is all a marketplace. If I'm a retailer, I personally it's sort of like hit the delete button on a lot of the selection, focus on sincere selection, because ultimately this is a really negative experience for customers because stuff's going to cost too much. And, eventually people figure it out.
I was going to ask if you think, obviously people like us pay attention to things like this and kind of see this stuff because we're looking at listings on the various marketplaces every single day. But I wonder if like the general public kind of picks up on this as well and sees the same SKU across all these different retailers and the different pricing and the chuggy names of the brands that are made up based on which retailer it's on. I'm kind of curious, like how long it'll take for the general public to realize that it's going on and that it sucks.
Yeah, it's second moment of truth. It's when the inflatable couch shows up at your house and you're just like, well, this sucks. And so like that's an extreme example, but I would expect the same thing at some of these others. And, as well as long term, the thing that the retailers I think are missing here is it degrades their brand. And while Amazon people might, sling arrows at Amazon for like suppressing a buy box when they see a higher price elsewhere, they're protecting against this CX. And you see others that have not deployed technology in a similar way. And all of a sudden the coffee table that you buy, is being sold elsewhere, for a third of the price. And oh, by the way, that's not the retailer's decision. That's the manufacturer's decision because it is a marketplace. And I think that's the interesting twist here in that the marketplace is now the tail wagging the dog.
I see. Yeah. Interesting. I also wonder about just like the overall homogenization of marketplaces with the same products everywhere, even if the prices are different, like it's the same product.
Yeah. It's like I love going into like a curated brick and mortar retail store. And it's just like, okay, who has taste? What did they pick? Why is it versus, marketplaces are great. But at the same time, it's just like, it just becomes a pile of junk.
It does. Searching for furniture is kind of searching through a pile of junk. It's kind of like going to the Goodwill outlet store and you're like,
God, we bought this changing table once and oh God, like it was from Wayfair and like it was basically like sawdust and screws, showed up. And like I ended up just being like, man, not worth the $50. Like just go donate it to Goodwill. Like it was just, oh God, it was awful.
Love it. All right, on that happy note about sawdust and other things, let's go into story number 3, which is we're covering this recent Wall Street Journal article titled How TV Advertising Lost Its Relevance. And the short and sweet version of the article is that clearly traditional TV advertising just isn't really working anymore and it's expensive. Streaming TV was supposed to be this like saving grace, not moving as fast as wanted. And then advertisers shift or rely more heavily on retail media. How do you kind of interpret the perspective of this article versus the direction that someone like Amazon is going with this kind of push for more upper funnel STV spend?
So I wouldn't say it's not working. Nothing works better, than sight, sound, motion. And so it's just that it's not working as well as it did before. And so if I'm an advertiser 30 years ago, there's 3, then 4 networks, at least I'm wearing my US hat. And it's pretty simple to do the calculations of sort of reach and frequency. Not perfect, but it's pretty damn good. Now it's really fragmented. And our time is really fragmented. And so within television, a lot of times people, have 2 screens on, or it's just harder to track. Or, I look at sort of just all the different streaming platforms that are out there. And there was even an article this morning about the bundling, the rebundling. It's almost like, oh, great, we're going to go back to the cable package. But that is kind of where things are going because the advertisers ultimately want the reach. And so if reach then declines, the value of those ads then also declines. And so I think that's number one, is just the fractured nature, that television, what's happened there. And then within the context of retail's, media is, I think many are seeing as sort of the third wave of digital. And at first you have search, then you have social, and then you have retail media. And it's sort of like, well, why is that? And to me, it's sort of 2 big things. Number one, nobody reports to Wall Street on reach and frequency. Everybody reports on sales. And so retail media, allows us to see sales and directly tie sales to the advertising. First paragraph of Ogilvy on advertising. He talks about, I don't care how pretty the ad is. I care what happened with sales. And so I think that's absolutely the most important one, is being able to then tie to sales. The other aspect that I think is really driving this is that if I look forward, it is you sort of inverse the walled gardens, and then it becomes principally Walmart and Amazon as the bottom of the garden, and then they build up and they create these relationships with publishers that then tie back. And so they can then stitch together sort of a unified look, what's happening within the customers, but they become the mortar for the wall around the garden. And that's why it's so important that, Amazon, what they're investing in Prime Video, and Walmart buying Vizio. That then allows them to sort of create, sort of a holistic measurement from upper funnel all the way down to transactions, and then tie them together, via, a single, ID, so deterministically with a bit of probabilism, on top.
I wonder if however many years ago before the retailers started building everything up, if anyone would have predicted that like the retailers were going to be the ones driving that shift and driving the power of like more effective advertising than the TV advertising industry. That's what I was thinking about as you were going.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it's because, a lot of folks, I remember one time I was working with somebody at Amazon like, I don't know, 8, 9 years ago. And she said to me, why does brand so-and-so, care so much about sales? I thought all they cared about was reach and frequency. And I was like, it's sort of like, look, it's a reach and frequency is an intermediary or an input metric that then ultimately does drive sales. And so what I think happened within the media world is everybody got too focused on those intermediary metrics and not necessarily what the outcome they were trying to drive. And so now as retail media takes off, folks start to focus on those sales. And to me, there's a longitudinal question about the durability of the impression or the depth of the impression, i.e., when am I capturing existing demand, i.e. search or sponsored products, and when am I generating new demand, i.e., STV. And so I think brands, like, just because you can see a 14-day ROAS doesn't mean you should look at it. And so figuring out what are the right metrics across these various vehicles. And oh, by the way, reach and frequency matters as they build out, a full funnel strategy to take advantage of both, the ability to reach these customers, but then also then to track the efficacy of their advertising.
Got it. All right. To begin to wrap us up, I'm changing up our normal closing questions because, well, you already hinted at the big shift. So I'm going to have you give a little bit more information without giving away the whole thing about what's coming out from Flywheel soon. And we'll cover it in more depth next month as we are required to do so. But what is the big shift? What is this project?
Sure. So been digging into sort of the idea of sort of the balance of power between, retailers and brands, and how is that then shifting, over time. One is a function of marketplaces, but then two, also a function of, sort of what information retailers are sharing with brands, and how do brands create operating leverage based off of what the retailers are exposing to them, and then create competitive advantages for themselves. And so building out a white paper and digging into this, but it's sort of a fascinating shift. And in some ways, it's the rebundling of the various parts of a brand, i.e. sales, marketing, supply chain, and being a little bit less siloed and a more smushed together in order to create value for their shareholders.
Perfect. And that's it for this month's e-commerce news. Tune into next month's episode for the latest and greatest, what truly belongs above the fold in e-com news. I'm Emma Irwin, and I'll see you next time.